Hey there, guys. This is Slamzeron, aka YouTube's Tosuke. As you guys probably know, especially if you've watched it or if you just keep up with things, Saint Seiya Soul of Gold, the latest spin-off anime of the Saint Seiya series, has concluded. It's been concluded, I think, for like 2 or 3 weeks, depending on where you watched it. I watched it on Crunchyroll. Um, it's been done, and I like Saint Seiya, so I'm gonna review it because that's what I do. That's what I do with my life. This is basically a Gold Saint uh, series. So for those of you who like your Gold Saints, and as you can see in the front, Iolia looks all cool, and you're thinking, oh, that's not his cloth. Well, he actually gets a god cloth. In fact, they all get god cloths. It's kind of cool. That's sort of like this series' big selling point, quote unquote. I know a lot of people, for a lot of fans, to them, anything that's not the Lost Canvas is just Toei trying to make money. You know, God forbid people see the business side of things. But essentially, but the basic plot, and I'll go over like other details. This is actually the second time I record this because I wasn't pleased with the first time, my first recording, I mean. But basically, the Gold Saints have been revived, and no, they don't know why. The actual first scene shows Leo Iolia, falling down from like something and like the cold, and he's like back alive. And he's like, "Oh, what's going on?" He's got like this marking on his face. They all kind of have like the markings on their body, and they were revived from when during the Hades arc when all the Gold Saints came together and burned their Cosmo to like open up a hole in the Wailing Wall so that Seiya and the crew can go to Elysium. It starts off. It shows that, and then like it's more about. It takes place like seemingly right after that point, I'd say, because obviously Seiya and the gang, they're in like a different area, so this other stuff takes place on Earth, and I think with over the course of like a couple of days too, chronologically. But basically, Iolia, he's trying to figure things out, like, oh, where am I? Where are my friends? What am I supposed to do? Do I have another duty I need to do? And so, he gets captured. He meets this chick named Leafy, and it's like, help me, Iolia. There's shit going down in Asgard, which is your current location. Oh, what's going on? Oh, there's this, and it turns out there's this, the Yggdrasil tree, or Yggdrasil, however you say it, is like sucking all the energy and life force out of Asgard and people. In fact, it's actually draining the Gold Saints Cosmos. Well, so they're actually weaker right now. Which I'm going to come back to the whole power scale thing as we continue onward. But and so basically at that point it's Iolia and Leafia looking for the other Gold Saints and trying to like make it to like the main, I guess, capital of Asgard so they can do business. And the first few episodes, if you can even call this like an arc, this is sort of like the Gold Saint meet and greet sort of catch up arc where it's like it shows nearly all of the Gold Saints and what they're up to because they were all revived, and Pisces Aphrodite and Cancer Death Mask, they're hanging out. Death Mask actually in particular has a very interesting moment because anyone who's seen the original Saint Seiya knows that Death Mask is a scumbag. He is probably the worst person among the Gold Saints. Yet here, he's a little different because you see he's gambling and whatnot, and he's all like, and Iola's all like, oh, why don't you come with us and help us do shit? And Deathmask's all like, no, I don't want to. I just want to live my life, bitches. And he's gambling and whatnot, and he's getting a lot of money. But it turns out that he's actually giving that money to this sick woman with her. I think she's either sick or someone in her family is sick. It's basically this poor woman and her. I think her siblings, either her siblings or her kids, I don't remember. But basically, Deathmask is giving them money to like help them live and pay for any medicine and food and whatnot. And shit goes awry with them, and and Deathmask is like, oh no, the only people who kind of like me, and of course the girl dies, and Deathmask has like a really sad moment, and at that point he's just like, I'm going to fight for the Saints, and I'm going to shave off my goatee. I kind of wish he'd kept it. I thought he looked kind of cool. But this series doesn't really do too much. I say series. This show doesn't really do too much with the designs besides the cloths and the new characters. Other than that, the Gold Saints pretty much look the same as they did before. And Taurus Aldebaran and Libra Doko, they're at the arena. Aquarius Camus pretty much defected to the Asgard side. I believe it's because, from what I remember, it's because he knew he had a friend, or he made a promise to a friend who happened to be a god warrior fighting for Asgard. Several familiar faces from, or a couple of familiar faces, as well as familiar faces or characters who knew, or like relatives of some of the god warriors in the Asgard arc of the original series. They show up. Like, I believe Hagen, like a relative of Hagen who fought Hyoga, is in it. I think he's the guy who Aquarius Camus feels indebted to, so he defects to their side. And I believe the brother of, I think his name is Hercules, the guy who was like immortal, who Seiya fought, who then also tried to kill Sorrento, like when he showed up during the end of the Asgard arc. And Hilda and Freya from the Asgard arc show up. Hilda's actually sick, and Andreas, who's the antagonist, he's been poisoning her as well. He's like this like castle doctor who like turns evil due to, reasons that I'll get to later on. But after all the Gold Saints have been kind of shown, they then and after a few fights where actually some of the Gold Saints get defeated. The first being a Pisces Aphrodite, which is actually kind of important. Because the Gold Saints are currently weak, or weaker, so it's the formula of going against the odds is present here, but it's also kind of switched up later on, because once the Gold Saints decide to do their big attack, they actually destroy the thing that's making them weaker, or they neutralize it somehow or something. I don't remember if it's an actual thing or a person or some sort of magical spell or something, but basically the Gold Saints are back at being full power, and they do the Odin Sapphire thing that they did with the Asgard arc before, where Andreas gives his god warriors like these Odin Sapphires so they become stronger. But it doesn't really do much. It's kind of funny. Like, it kind of goes into that formula that Saint Seiya does, where like each episode or each section or chapter or whatever is just another fight. And that's usually where the god warrior that the good guys are fighting will get like his backstory. But here, it's like the Gold Saints pretty much beat up the bad guy like right after they've stayed their time, and like once they've overstayed their welcome, they're pretty much and I mean like in sort of like a timing sort of way, because they have their backstory, then they get defeated. They don't really do the whole thing where it's all like, I'm fighting you, oh no, why can't I hit you, my attacks aren't doing anything, ha ha ha, it's because I'm a higher rank than your highest rank, it's an equivalent thing, no, we will win, we will prevail, ha, oh no, I've been defeated, how could you beat me, you're weaker than me, I burned my energies higher than yours doing this thing. And you can maybe argue that at first it starts off that way, but once they get into like the climax where the Gold Saints are going through like the different rooms, and I guess some castle, I think it's Andreas Castle, they all get defeated. There's one, speaking of Aquarius Camus, one thing about him, because again he defects, and when the show starts, he's already defected. Like, they don't show him being all like, oh, wait a minute, something's gone awry, I need to switch to the good side. No. Or switch to the bad side, I mean. But he's already bad, quote unquote. And I was kind of hoping they would do a thing where, like, it turns out he's a double agent and he was just trying to either get intel or find a weak spot. But what ends up happening is that, like, he fights Capricorn Shura. They do battle. Camus kind of wins, but then one of the God Warriors comes in and kills sure about like stabbing his heart, and then Camus like, no, oh, I'm a good guy again. I'm just like, that was kind of lame. I was kind of hoping they would have done a little bit more with Camus, and that's really one out of two of my complaints. I guess technically three. The second one being this show, like Sailor Moon Crystal, it was a bi-weekly show, meaning it was every other week, every other Friday specifically on Crunchyroll at least. And like Sailor Moon Crystal, the animation quality for this show wasn't really that good. There were points where it didn't look that good. I actually screen capped one with Doko where he has this really derpy face. But apparently on the DVD and Blu-ray, very much like Sailor Moon Crystal, they've actually fixed up some stuff, and you can find comparisons online. So if this show does get a dub of sorts or a home release in North America, I do hope that they use the DVD or Blu-ray version of the show and not just like take the digital version off of the internet, because this is actually a web series, believe it or not, and that may be part of the reason why the animation is not as good, is because it's a web series. And I believe Sailor Moon Crystal also started off as a web series. I think it's actually gone to a more weekly time as well as being on TV. So there's some stuff going on with that. But here, this was just like a short run thing. They ran their little show, and on the DVD it's just gonna look better. I think it's already 2 volumes out of like, I guess 3 maybe, or maybe just 2. I don't know. But other than that, besides one other thing that I'm gonna save until a little bit later, I really liked the show. So yeah, and during these big fights, like I said, the Gold Saints pretty much beat up the bad guys. Like there's one scene where Virgo Shaka, who is quote unquote the closest man to God. That's one thing I kind of like about the Gold Saints in particular, in comparison to say maybe Dragon Ball, where the power scale is a little harder to sort of figure out, and I feel like it sometimes confuses fans. With Saint Seiya, with the Gold Saints, a character's strength, like there are different levels of it. Like obviously, Taurus Aldebaran is the physically strongest Gold Saint. I believe at one point they say that Libra Doko is the best fighter, and in this show, like during Saga's fight, they say that Gemini Saga is the most powerful. So you got 3 different like types of strength here, and like and omnipotent to see, or whatever the word is. So they're all strong, but in terms of like who would win in a fight, there are different variables that you need to keep in mind. I feel like that makes the series a bit more interesting, because it's not just a matter of like everyone being strong and whatnot. And like Shaka, Shaka's like, he's fighting this guy who's like a quote unquote god, and like they're fighting, and Shaka beats him. Is like, you're not a god. It's like, what do you mean? Why am I not a god? It's like, you're lacking something. What am I lacking? You're lacking compassion. And it's at that point that it's usually like the good guy, the Gold Saint, defeats him, but then they end up like being defeated as well due to like either the place crumbling or some other factor. It's like a double kill thing. I mean, it's not really like Lost Canvas though, I find, because one, they still won, or I don't know. I feel like it's a bit different. Plus, there's no real like, the formula's kind of thrown out the window a little bit at that point, though it does come back. And spoilers, all Gold Saints actually come back too. But and then and the God Warriors, they've got their different backstories. Like I said, some of them are either relatives or friends of the Asgard God Warriors from the Asgard filler arc of the original. And my favorite was probably Frody, the guy with the blue hair. I thought he was really cool, and he and Iolia, they do get, and he has a cool sword too. It kind of reminds me, it looks a little bit like Aaron's sword from Pandora's Tower a little bit. It looks cool. And it's around their second, Iolia and Frody's second like battle of the series, where it's revealed that Leafia was actually the one who brought back the Gold Saints, and it's like, oh, isn't that taboo? I guess we gotta kill her, and so she actually gets killed off. And then Frody, he turns good and he ends up fighting this scythe guy who it later turns out he's actually working for the good guys as well. Several of the god warriors actually turn good, including the Hercules brother guy. He and Frody are like the only two that are like left, while they and of course at the end they're shown training new people. But and so they confront Andreas and they're fighting and whatnot. Turns out Andreas is actually the host of Loki. So they're fighting. They think they've won. Turns out they didn't. Iolia's cloth gets destroyed, and all the others get like absorbed. But then Iolia's brother, he shows it because he was also revived, and he actually was the first to wound Andreas / Loki, and he was the first to sort of exhibit like god cloth powers. And Shaka's been like trying to like contact Athena and figure out like why, like what's going on. She gives him an answer. They don't actually like let you hear her answer. It's more of something that it's just like a mystery, and I don't even think they actually outright tell you what she's saying anyway. She's sort of Athena / Saori is sort of portrayed in sort of like this quiet sort of thing. I mean, obviously if it's taking place during Hades, she's in a fucking pot, but you know. And so Iolaus and Iolia are they're fighting without their cloth, and that's sort of where like the soul thing. I kind of like this part because it's all like, we don't need our cloths to be strong, and they're actually doing their like attacks like lightning plasma and lightning thunderbolt and whatnot, and atomic thunderbolt. They're doing their like signature attacks without their cloth. And I thought that was kind of cool, and you know that's been done before in Saint Seiya. Like Seiya did his Pegasus Meteor Punch, you know, without his cloth, and when he was wearing his training garb, and like in the first episode. And you know, and that was cool. I like seeing that again. And I felt like it kind of brought more. It made the show more interesting, and that it wasn't just basically the main point with my review is that this show is very interesting, and that it doesn't necessarily follow the Saint Seiya formula 99% of the time. Iolia is pretty much given the protagonist role, and because of that, he's all like, "Oh, you're the only one who can do it," which is actually probably true. No, that is true, because at that point, there's only Iolia and Iolaus left. But like I said, all the other Gold Saints, they do come back, because it turns out that, you know, Aphrodite was actually doing like his little demon rose thing or whatever, and it's all because like he was the first one to be absorbed, quote unquote. But like because of his little rose thing, he put himself and all the other Gold Saints in like this stasis mode, so they didn't actually get absorbed, and they were just kind of unconscious. And then they come back, and so it's like a big battle between all the Gold Saints and Loki. Who did I say that? I can't remember. It's fucking late. But yeah, Loki. It turns out that Andreas is the host of Loki. Sorry if I didn't say that before, or if I repeated myself. Sorry again. But and before the Gold Saints come back, friggin' Iolia is given the Odin god robe that Seiya wore, the blue crystallized one with the sword, except this time he turns it gold, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. I felt like it turning it gold was a little overkill. You know, I don't know. I mean, Seiya's didn't turn white or silver or whatever, or even red. It still was the blue. I don't know why. I kind of get why they did it. But at the same time, I'm just like, it was a bit overkill, I think. And it turns out that Leafia is actually it turns out that she's like Loki and Andreas and Saori and Athena. Leafia is actually the host and sort of like the earthly representative of Odin. It turns out that actually Odin revived all the Gold Saints, and not only that, but also that they weren't like given like new reanimated bodies from like they were given their own bodies, and it's like they were basically given like a whole new life, and they're not like, it's not like some sort of like shadow of a form that as soon as they've done their duty they're gonna disappear, even though they actually do disappear. But basically the good guys win, and all's good and whatnot. But then you know, the Gold Saints, they start disappearing, and that was kind of strange. I thought I was kind of hoping they would have done a thing where it's like, oh, we're alive, and I haven't read Next Dimension, though. This last scene kind of helps put the time frame of this spinoff into perspective, because I was confused as to whether or not it took place right after Hades, or literally right after they broke the wall and Seiya and the crew went to Elysium, or after, or like during Next Dimension, or like in between Hades and Next Dimension. But I think it takes place like after Seiya and the crew are in Elysium, and I believe when they're fighting Hypnos and Thanos, or whatever those gods are, and because I think it's Mu or somebody, but one of the Gold Saints suggests that they give Seiya and the crew their cloths, because for those who have played Brave Soldiers, or even Soldier Soul, which is out now, by the way, and or have seen the Hades OVA, when they're fighting the Hypnos and Thanos, the Bronze Saints get cloths, like gold cloths, from the other people, and they're actually given to them by Poseidon. Like, Poseidon shows them like soap on Poseidon, and his Julian Solo form, or Julian Solo form, however you say it. But yeah, that's basically the show, and all's good. The Gold Saints won, and everything in Asgard turns back to normal. The voice acting is actually pretty good. Going into the review part now, it's the Hades OVA / video game cast. So the Hideyuki Tanaka plays both Iolia and the narrator. He does a good job of differentiating the two. And I'm generally of the mindset that just because a character is voiced by the narrator doesn't mean that they're a personification of the narrator anyway. And he does a good job of making the characters sound different. The narrator and Iolia, I mean. Tessho Genda's Aldebaran. Ryotaro Okiayu is Gemini Saga, who is also Zero and Dimlos. And he's known for kind of having that powerful voice. He was actually June in Ring Nikakiro as well. And I feel like here with his voice as Saga, he actually does a good job, because it's a little downplayed. Like, you can still tell it's him. At first I thought it was someone different, but you can still tell it's him. I think it's actually probably one of his better roles. He does kind of go back into it later on, but for the most part, it's a pretty good, unique approach to a voice he's already done. Though, speaking of which, I was almost kind of hoping they would have done something with Saga and Kenon, because, he just shows up, and Saga just shows up, and everyone keeps calling him Saga. I know there's a slight difference in terms of their appearance, but Saga doesn't actually say anything. He does address himself as Saga when he does his big fight with one of the God Warriors, but other than that, he doesn't really say anything. And I thought it would have been cool if, like, it turns out that it was actually Kenon the entire time, and he just chose not to say anything, because, I mean, they're both voiced by the same person. Their personalities, I think, are a little different, and from what I remember, isn't Kenon alive anyway? Like, I think I remember him being alive even after / during the Gold Saint Cosmo burning Wailing Wall destruction thing, from what I remember. But I thought it would have been cool if they had done something with it. I guess that's another thing that I wish I mean, that's not a big deal, because, I mean, obviously, for the fan service, having Saga as opposed to Kenon is probably better, since he's sort of like the original Gold Saint Gemini that fans know. The music was nice, and I really like the theme songs. The opening theme song is a cover of Soldier Dream, the second Saint Seiya opening, done by Route 5. The people who did the second opening to Saint Seiya Omega, I think it's called New Myth Omega. The one before they get their new cloths and Subaru shows up. It's actually a really nice song. At first it sounded a little quiet, but after listening to it for a while, the volume started to kind of pick up for me, especially when I downloaded the actual full song. It sounded really cool there. And because they're a group, like a boy band group, I think they're a boy band. I mean, boy band is sort of like the poppy sort of connotation, not necessarily the literally a group of male singer whatever. because it's more than one person, more than two people or whatever. But basically, their backing vocal, the part where it's like Saint Seiya, then Seiya, which is usually like the background vocal guy, sort of like in the middle of the Saint Seiya part. There's like, it sounds like a choir of saints is like singing Seiya's name. It's like, oh, that's really cool sounding. And the ending theme song is really great as well. Like, I was honestly kind of surprised because it's also done by Root 5. It's a slower, sort of like sadder song. The song itself, the lyrics are about a group of high schoolers, really close high school friends graduating in the spring, and they give like certain images there, and it's talking about like, oh, let's meet again after we've all grown up and followed our dream for the promised tomorrow or whatever. And during that end part, it shows the gold saints in their god cloths standing in a vertical single file line, looking up, and then the next unit shows what they're looking up at, which is a vision, well, like an image of like Athena/Saori in the sky. And I just thought that was a really pretty image. It's just a really pretty song. If you can find it, definitely look it up. You should really just watch the show. Honestly, as far as a recommendation is concerned, I think this is definitely a good show to watch, especially if you either don't know what Saint Seiya is or if you didn't like Saint Seiya beforehand. Because one, it's the shortest out of all the spinoffs. Lost Canvas being like 26 or 24 or whatever, and Omega being like 97 or 98. This is only 13 episodes, and they take the original but also put a bit of a twist on it and like do an original story. It's paced decently, and it follows the formula while also putting a twist on the formula. So honestly, I think this is probably the best Saint Seiya spinoff. I saw this one review on Crunchyroll, which is like, everyone's being fooled by nostalgia. They're just trying to get Toei's just trying to get money, and I had to write a counter review basically because I'm just like, shut the fuck up. And it seems to be a trend with English-speaking Saint Seiya fans. They seem to think that either Bandai or Toei is just out for nothing but money, which, I don't know if that's necessarily completely true. I mean, they do want money, but that's neither here or there. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this anime if you didn't like Saint Seiya. If you didn't like Lost Canvas for what it does, or if you just didn't like the original, or whatever reason, I think Soul of Gold, if you're interested in giving it another chance, I'd say watching Soul of Gold is a good choice, unless you just want to marathon the original. But yeah, that's my review on Soul of Gold. I really liked it, and here's to more awesome Saint Seiya spinoff animes. Maybe they should do Next Dimension. I'd love to see an anime on that. They need to do that. But yeah, this is Flamsaron, aka YouTube Sasuke, signing out. See you later.